The housing crisis in some parts of our state is just truly amazing, and as it is across the country. The other parts, like my hometown of Syracuse, never had a housing boom and hasn't had a bust. That's because we were down in a kind of economic depression all along. But for those areas that boomed and now are going bust, we're finding out some really horrible stories. I know that nationwide, about 1 in 10 households are expected to face foreclosure over the course of this housing recession, or housing value collapse induced recession. As many as 10 million or 12 million households. And that's just epic in terms of what it's done. And it's concentrated particularly in Black and Latino communities, where we find now, as the studies are being done, that people who qualified for prime loans were directed to subprime loans in a predatory lending scheme. We find collusion between lenders and crooked lawyers that steered people and misguided people into these loans. And then when the housing values collapsed and the economy went down, these people have trouble making their payments, the banks won't reduce the principal or refinance. They push them for every dollar they can get, and then they want to foreclose so they can resell their property. You know, we did something very different in the 1930s. We formed the Home Ownership Loan Corporation, which had some problems with racial discrimination, but leave that aside. What it did was refinance people facing foreclosures on long-term fixed interest, fixed rate, long-term mortgages. So they went from 10 years to, back then the issue was short mortgages, they stretched them out over 30 years and saved millions of people their homes. And when that Home Ownership Loan Corporation shut down after refinancing all these homes in the 50s, it had turned a profit for the government. What we ought to do today is have that kind of agency refinance loans so that people go from these fluctuating rates to a fixed rate, go from lengthen the term of the loan and cut the principal down to the historic rate in the housing prices, not the bubble rate that they bought the mortgage at. And that's the kind of thing that was done with the Home Ownership Loan Corporation, and that could keep people in their homes. And because the federal government won't do it, I think the state bank we've been talking about should do that. Because you want to stabilize our communities, you want to keep people in their homes, and then we want to find work for them. But the first thing to do is keep people in their homes. And, you know, the banks will have to take a haircut on that. But, hey, we bailed them out after this whole banking crisis, and they were the ones that didn't see the bubble that anybody with any common sense, any look at the historical statistics could see. I'm not in housing, I was a tenant, and I saw it coming. And I think they were playing musical chairs as some of the emails and documents have come out. It's like they were saying, let's hope we get out of this before the whole thing crashes and we're retired and rich. And that's gambling with our futures, and what we need to resolve that is to refinance these homes. I'd also add in a housing question that there's no reason why the state legislature should be voting on rent control ordinances in New York City. That should be a home rule issue for New York City.